No? Okay. How about deep web? What do you think of when I say deep web? Go for it. Okay. Okay. So if it's not available with a simple search, then you would go another step further. Can search engines find it? Can search engines find it? Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? When I say deep web, what do you think? Yes. That's good. Oh, okay. Correct. So it's not necessarily the language as much as the words that are being chosen, right? Yeah, that's part of it. And to illustrate a little bit more on yours, drop-down menus, when you have to select categories, good example of that. So if Google would have to, in order to find that content, pick from a drop-down list, it won't because it doesn't do that. So that's a barrier that prevents Google from indexing the content within, even though the content would be publicly available. It's not password protected or secure or anything like that, but Google won't go in because it doesn't drop down. It doesn't choose from multi-select list. Right? So that's a explanation on the example that you provided. Yeah, excellent. All right, good. We're on the right page. So, anybody remember playing the game Where's Waldo? You guys have that? Waldo's a little guy with a red hat, white and red striped shirts, and it's a kid's game. There's one Waldo in an ocean full of people. So somewhere in here, there's a Waldo. See if you can find the one guy wearing a red striped jacket. That one? That's not Waldo. Where? You think that's Waldo? You sure that's Waldo? Yeah. See, there's a yellow one, yellow and red. Yeah. So, no, you're right. The Waldo one is the one with the black hat up on the top. And there'll be others that kind of look like it. And it's the child's game that basically teaches how to discriminate against the pattern. So, okay, some things might look alike, but only one of these is the right one. That's a kind of a skill. So why am I using this? Because it's fun, and sometimes I just like having a good time. All right, moving on. What? Really? Okay, fine. Because pattern recognition is, in great part, what sourcing is about. Pattern recognition has a lot to do with how we make logical leaps, fill in the blanks, and educated guesses to get from one place on the web to another. So part of what we can uncover that is considered deep web can be uncovered because we're making educated guesses, playing with patterns, if you will. So it's a skill that most of you probably already have if you found yourself in sourcing. You just need to learn how to sharpen it and use it more efficiently. So I want to provide you with a very quick exercise, and then I'll give you some bullet points. What do you see on the screen? What do you see? Is that a 12, 13, and 14? Is it 2, 3, and 4? Or is it 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4? Do you see the letter B on the screen? Now do you see the letter B? Now do you see the letter B? It's the same shape. But look how, in context, it can be a B or it can be a 13. Why am I showing you this? Because when we're doing sourcing, we don't need to ascertain an exact match in order to proceed with what we do. In other words, if I was hunting with a bow and arrow and wanted to hunt a deer to feed my family, do I have to wait until the full deer is in plain sight, silhouetted against the landscape, before I loose my arrow? Or can I loose my arrow once I see antlers and a white bushy tail? If I have to wait for the perfect moment when the deer is in silhouette, full-bodied, and I can clearly see it, I may not be eating very soon. Very often, I will take my shot and my arrow when I simply see head, antlers, and a bright bushy tail. It looks like a deer, right? Unfortunately, in recruiting, we've been told to look for this exact thing, the full silhouette of the deer. What I want to have you walk away from this session today is look for antlers and a bright bushy tail. You don't need to see the whole thing. If you can identify the two primary pieces of it, chances are pretty good it's probably going to be what you want. You don't need to continue searching until you've certified that it is exactly what you want. Why? Because when we communicate online, we are more so these days than ever before using the same kind of vocabulary, to your point about language, that we use casually in conversation. Not that long ago, in order for you to create a web page, you would have to have some technical knowledge and know about like FTP or FTP and HTTP and HTML, and maybe you had a web developer or somebody that was in charge of your website. You would give them a Word document and then they would put it into a web page. But now, click and you're on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or you have a blog. So because of that, it's so much easier to generate content that we're actually generating content using the same kind of language that we use when we have regular conversations. We're not editorializing our content like we used to. Used to send it to the editorial department to correct the grammar and the marketing department to correct the images and all that other stuff. Now we just, as we think it, sometimes people actually start writing before they even think it. But the point is, that pattern is the same pattern as the way we communicate. And if we try to search using the old method of trying to find the pattern that existed when things were editorialized or when people had to have a higher degree of knowledge in order to make information online, we're only going to find the older content because the newer content is written in a new language. Make sense? So, classify the unfamiliar quickly and accurately. Learn how to recognize an objective from different angles. Identify patterns, even if they're partly hidden, and then account for context. Look, if you see antlers and a bushy tail in a shopping mall, don't shoot the arrow. It's probably not a deer, okay? But if you see it in a forest behind some trees, it's probably a deer. So context has a great deal to do with it. When you look at a resume, how many times do you think, in your gut, take a guess, how many times do you think the word resume appears on a resume? Have you ever seen a resume that doesn't have the word resume? So why are you searching for the keyword resume? I'm asking the question. Why are you searching for the keyword resume? Because Ayers taught you that? Because it used to work 15 years ago. Doesn't work anymore, right? Does the word resume appear on my LinkedIn profile? Is my LinkedIn profile kind of like a resume? No. My LinkedIn profile is not kind of like a resume. Yes, that's the correct answer. LinkedIn profile is kind of like a resume. So what I'm saying is you don't need to look for a document that is called a resume in order to identify something that is, in fact, a resume. Now, you might think, oh, well, what about CV or curriculum vitae? Yeah, okay, fine. But what about other things? Let me ask you a question. What do you think is the most common word across all resumes? What one word, trick question, appears on almost every resume? I would even say every resume. The word skills, or skills, the word, like, do you mean skills, or do you mean like different kinds of skills? The word skills? Nope. Sometimes it's just experience. Sometimes it doesn't even have that. It's just Java, C++, whatever. So no. No, objective resume writers are telling people nowadays not to write it anymore. Experience, maybe responsibilities, maybe history. It's not always the same. Not the same in every resume. Masood? A year. Every resume will have a year in it. Whether it's a year of graduation or dates of experience, every resume will have a 4-digit year in it. Think about it. So that's how I want you to think when you search the deep web. I want you to think about the context and what might appear in that context that isn't necessarily called what you think it should be called. Because if you look for only resumes called resume, you're only going to find a small portion of them because most of them don't have the word resume. In fact, I would even tell you, have you ever done a search for the word chronological experience, or the phrase chronological experience? Try that and you'll see what happens. A lot of people create resumes in Word and they use the word template, and one of the template choices is chronological experience, and that gets saved as the name of the file. So when they upload it to their website, the name of the resume isn't Shally's resume, it's chronological experience.doc. Believe it or not. Why? Because that's what Microsoft called that file. And the point is they want to upload the resume. They don't want to call it something specific. So that happens more than you think. Again, it could be a resume, it just doesn't have to be called a resume. As I was mentioning before, natural speech patterns, the way we talk every day, ends up finding its way online. There's two kinds of content. One is when people are talking about themselves, or more importantly, writing about themselves. So for example, if I have a LinkedIn profile, am I writing about myself? Yeah, who else would I be writing about? On my LinkedIn profile, it's about me. I'm writing about myself, right? And a lot of times, recruiters get stuck, sourcers get stuck thinking about only finding content based on people writing about themselves, which, mind you, is a pretty big source of data. I mean, there's a lot of LinkedIn profiles. There's a lot of Viadeo profiles. There's a lot of Zing profiles. But there's also a very big set of data that is people writing about other people. So your information might end up online because you put it there, because you're talking about yourself, but it could also end up online because I put it there because I'm talking about you. Does that make sense? I may not have been the source of that information, but that information is about me. I didn't write it. I may not even know that it's out there. For example, let's say that I am a CPA for a major consulting firm, KPMG, right? And you're a Deloitte recruiter trying to recruit CPAs out of KPMG. Maybe this is a little bit too kind of bland of an example, but go with me. If I found a page of, let's say, a local accounting association, maybe it's the Bangalore Chartered, would you guys have Chartered Management Accountants, or how do you say, you don't have CPA here, right? It's Chartered Accountant. All right, so it's the Bangalore Chartered Accountant Association. And on the association page, our website, there's a page that's called Leadership Team. And you click on that page, and there's the profiles of 5 or 6 people, the president, the vice president, secretary, treasurer, and whatever, membership committee director, or whatever. All of those people are members of the Bangalore Chartered Accountants Association, but every single one of those has a regular job that they go to during the day. You see what I mean? They work at KPMG as a chartered accountant. But their information is on this website because the website's providing the information of its leadership team. These are volunteers who have regular jobs, but when I'm reading this profile, it reads kind of like a resume. Mr. Steckerl was a chartered accountant at PNC Bank for 12 years before joining us in the position of forensic accounting specialist, blah, 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 blah. It's a resume. Antlers, bushy tail. Think about it. But that person didn't write that. It was posted for them by that group. That's different than me posting my LinkedIn profile. So there are some roles for which we source where the data that we find isn't data that's generated by the individual themselves. It's generated by others. And it's a very big source of data that is often ignored because you're always looking for me talking about me, my LinkedIn profile. Another thing that you might find out there that are natural speech patterns, does anybody here have a signature way of signing their emails? That's like your own little thing. How do you sign your emails? Sorry? And what else? Do you say kind regards, best wishes? Do you say which one? Kind regards. Okay. So if you always do that, chances are that I might be able to find information that you posted or was posted about you somewhere else by using the same pattern. Make sense? So in our signature file, we might reveal a specific set of words that together, we're the only ones that use those words. For example, chief sourcing architect. I'm the only one that's put that into a signature file. So if you were to search for chief sourcing architect, you might find emails out there that are mine. Think about that. What else? Natural phrases. What is a natural phrase? A natural phrase are words that appear together all the time. It's 2 or 3 words that always appear together. Systems engineer, software developer. That's a natural phrase. Software by itself means a completely different thing. Developer by itself means a completely different thing. Software developer means a very specific thing, right? Chartered means something, and accountant means another, but chartered accountant, very specific. So that is a natural phrase. So we need to find the natural phrases that people use. I'm sorry, your signature was head of leadership hiring. Head of leadership hiring is your natural phrase. There may not be a lot of other people who use that exact wording for their job title. Make sense? There might be, but I don't know until I actually search. Then there's status updates, blog posts, and ad hoc groups. Ad hoc groups, for example, at a conference. Right now, if I wanted to recruit recruiters in India, probably one of the best things I could do is go and search hashtag RSS14. Think about it. Anybody tweeting about that is a recruiter. Right? No? That's a phrase, so to speak. In that case, it's just one keyword. But then we have fill in the blank. I'll show you a little bit about that later. But that's basically where you have 2 words separated by some other word. The way I arrived at this particular method was out of just sheer frustration. When I started originally in recruiting, Oracle was a pretty big deal. And it still is today, but Oracle was like the king of the hill. And everybody wanted candidates that had Oracle, in whatever, with Oracle 5 or Oracle 4. And as I evolved in the field, they started coming out with new versions, Oracle 6, Oracle 6.1, Oracle 7, Oracle, you know what I'm going with that, right? I got so frustrated because for me to run a search, I literally had to have 15 different variations. Oracle 6 or Oracle 7 or Oracle 8 or Oracle 9 or Oracle 10 or Oracle 12 or Oracle... Screw that. So I thought, there's got to be a better way. And what I arrived at was, open quotes, Oracle asterisk, and then ERP or whatever the technology is, and close quotes. That asterisk in the middle acts as a placeholder. So it'll find anything that's Oracle blank ERP, Oracle 7, Oracle 8, Oracle 9, right? That's how I came up with that. By the way, a little secret I'll let you in on. If you ever talk to somebody that is an instructor that is presenting that can't tell you how they arrived at what they're trying to show you, they probably stole it from somebody else. Be warned. Happens all the time. Alternative content. What kind of alternative content is out there? So now we're back to the example that you provided. So this is, you hit on the language stuff, people writing about themselves, people being written about, signature phrases, natural phrases. But you hinted to this last one, alternative content. Stuff that's not on the open web. Not to say that, I'm not saying that you're not allowed to have access to that content. In other words, this isn't like confidential information. It's just confidential, not really confidential. You're not supposed to be able to get to it, but it accidentally is out there, right? Like what you were talking about. Like, it's not protected, there's no password. It just wasn't really ever designed to be made available. For example, one of the obstacles, the drop-down. Let's say it's a database that publishes articles of a specific journal. Maybe there's a journal, a magazine or a journal for your profession that you're recruiting for. What are you working on for, for Deloitte? What kind of positions? Yeah, get specific, like ERP, for example. All right, so let's say that there was like the Journal of ERP Management, right? And they have a website. And on their website, they have an archive history of all the issues of that journal, right? Going back 5 years. Google doesn't really index that because in order to get to that content, Google would have to drop down a menu and choose the year and issue and volume number. So it doesn't do that. But if you went to the website and did that, you would see the issue. So it's not, the journal isn't trying to prevent you from accessing it, but Google it can't get to it. That's deep web. That's content that Google isn't finding, not because it's not allowed to, but because there's some sort of barrier that prevents it. There's a lot of that information out there. When it comes to people talking about themselves, one of my favorite methods is to search using pronouns. Using phrases like, for example, I am. If you put in quotations, I am a software engineer, close quotations, what do you think is going to come back from results? Pages with bios of people that are saying that they're a software engineer. Pretty straightforward, right? I'm a chartered accountant. I'm a iOS developer. I'm a left-handed, widget smoker. So that's first-person reference. But besides I am, we also have we are and my team. My team develops, my team works on, my team does, whatever, patterns. Then we also have third-person reference. This is people that are being mentioned in a bio. So for example, Shally Steckerl is president of the Sourcing Institute. Prior to joining the Sourcing Institute, he was, that phrase, he was, identifies a bio. It's a combination of words, he and was, that are very common, but when used together, he was, it's almost always somebody's bio. Think about it. When else do you see he was or she was? When else? Now, if you add he was with chartered accountant, you get where I'm going with this? That's how I want you to think. Antlers, bushy tail. The next one is action phrases. Action phrases. Stuff people do. Okay? Has anybody here been recently hired? Anybody here new, relatively last month or so? Couple months, been recently hired? Does anybody here have a new job? A year? 2 years? Okay? All right, Masood, thanks, man. Saving my ass. So, when you applied for the position, can you recall some of the details of the job description? The rec? Not really. Would it, if I said, looking for a candidate that must have experience with applicant tracking systems, leading a sourcing team, building a recruiting function, does this kind of like sound like the kind of stuff that might have been in the job description? Okay. Now let me ask you, erase that. Let me ask you a different question. So, Masood, you and I meet socially at a professional social event. Or maybe even at a social event. And I have with me my Nana, my grandmother. She's 97 years old. And I introduce, this is my friend Masood. We're colleagues. This is my Nana. And my grandma says, Masood, so what do you do? You tell her what? This is my Nana. She's 97. You help find people for, okay. Did that appear in the job description? in the rec? You see where I'm going with this? I help my company find people. I help hire people. I conduct audits. I write software. I file scheduled 10Ks. These are action phrases that identify somebody based on the things that they do. If I were to look for the word write, W-R-I-T-E, inside of LinkedIn, how many results do you think I'm going to get? Millions. How about the word code? Millions. But what about the phrase write code? Or I write code? Or more specifically, I wrote code. Or even better than that, I wrote 1,000 lines of code. Now, who would write 1,000 lines of code? Right. It doesn't matter if their job title is software engineer, systems architect, web developer, front end, back end, rear end, top end, bottom end, special quark, chief Yahoo, technical specialist, whatever. They all write code. Get it? That's what you should search for, not software engineer. Even though software engineer is a good example of a phrase, it's not as accurate, and a lot of people don't call themselves software engineers. For example, at Microsoft, they call themselves SDEs or SDETs. At Facebook, what do they call themselves? And at Yahoo, technical Yahoos. They all do the same thing, which is write code. Right, there you go. See what I mean? That's what I want you to think of. What do your candidates say they do? What are the action phrases? Then in any database you go, LinkedIn, Monster, Dice, whatever tomorrow's future holds, any database, you'll find results. No matter how unsophisticated the database is. Because that's the common language that we use. Rather than trying to create a Boolean search with 27 variations of software engineer, that's bullshit. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked for 12 years. And yet there's still people out there that are trying to sell you that as if it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Guess what? Google is trying to simplify things because the average user is dumb. Google doesn't cater to smart people. You know what the most common searches are on Google? How do I make apple pie? Or apple pie recipe. Or Yamaha 600. That's what people Google for. Nobody knows how to do entitled and URL, site colon, blah, blah, blah bullshit. So what's Google doing? They're making it easier for people to type in things such as apple pie recipe and get exactly what they want, instead of trying to figure out ways to make searchers smarter. They even tried this for a while. There's a position at Google that was a search evangelist that went to libraries and schools and taught people how to search with Google. Job lasted about 2 years. Got nowhere. Because it's a never-ending, basically you're trying to educate people on how to use a search engine when the whole point of it is if you don't have to educate them and it works, then, you know what I mean, right? So here I am telling you, I write or I wrote code is much better than software engineer. Or software architect, or blah, 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 and file type colon PDF, or blah, blah. Come on, really? Who has time for that? I certainly don't. Themselves, right. I once ran over a software engineer with my car. My wife is a software engineer. You guys are finally getting my humor. What did you guys hear? Did you really think I was that serious? Is that the impression? Everybody in India thinks Shally's a stuffed shirt that's really serious. No, I like to have fun, just like everybody else. All right, so action phrases. I'm not going to talk about diversity unless any of you, raise your hand if you do diversity searches for your company. You do. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of quick hits. For diversity, this is a very useful technique because oftentimes you can use the way that people self-identify for particular ethnicities, for example, as a natural phrase. For example, did you know that I'm Hispanic? Did you know that? Now, on my LinkedIn resume or profile, whatever, do you think it says I'm Hispanic? Why would it? First thing I think of when I'm looking for a job is, where do I find jobs for Hispanics? No. I think of, where do I find jobs? Not for Hispanics, not for black people, not for Asians, but for jobs, right? So how can you identify that I'm Hispanic on my LinkedIn profile? I'm fluent in Spanish. I'm a native Spanish speaker. So the search native Spanish speaker identifies someone who is much more likely to be Hispanic than the word Hispanic. Because I might have gone to the Hispanic Academy of Arts, and I'm Asian. See what I mean? So, natural, fluent, native, those kinds of phrases. Native Spanish speaker, native Korean, native Chinese. That's a good diversity search technique. Here's an example using GitHub, /GitHub. What's that? Yeah, sorry. You had a search like that for Korean or? It works really well for people that have, that come from ethnicities where there's a different language, like Hispanic and Asian. Unfortunately, it doesn't work very well with African Americans because they don't speak a different language. But there are other ways we can search for that. For example, there are 7 historically black colleges and universities where predominantly black people go. So if you graduated from Spelman College, chances are 90% of the time you're black. So you use that instead. That's also still part of natural language. Don't look so shocked. Yeah. I'm sorry, are you trying to discriminate women? Are you trying to hire more women or less women? You're trying to hire more women? Okay. Yes. Yes. Thank God. There isn't. Imagine if there was. But you can still do that a couple of different ways. You mentioned the term she, but that would come up under profile, not on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, they might be, for example, members of SWE or WITI. WITI, Women in Technology. SWE, Society of Women Engineers. So their membership in an organization predominantly for women as a special interest group would identify that. If I'm a member of SWE, I'm probably a woman. Interestingly enough, members have to be women. However, did you know that the number one demographic of people searching the SWE website is males? 70% male. No. Okay, raise your hand if you're a female. Raise your hand if you're a female. Come on, if you don't raise your hand, this is the time when you're supposed to raise your hand. Raise your hand if you're a female, all right? Now raise your hand if you're a male. Looks to be about half and half. Maybe a little bit, maybe 60-40. So no, that's not it. It's guys looking for dates. I mean, you know, nobody goes on LinkedIn looking for a meaningful overnight relationship, but it happens. Just saying. So yes, you can use SWE or WITI or things like that. WITI, Women in Technology. And there's others too. There are women colleges as well, universities that graduate primarily women. Now, they're not allowed to discriminate exclusively, so you might find some men, right? Sororities. Pretty much only women belong to sororities. Although women can also belong to fraternities. But men can't belong to sororities. So the name of a sorority, for example, might be Alpha Phi Alpha. If I have Alpha Phi Alpha on my LinkedIn profile, I'm probably a sorority sister. So, again, natural language. Make sense? Is that what you wanted? Okay. The second example there, I'm blank investment banking. That's that fill in the blank search that I told you about earlier. So I'm in investment banking. I'm an investment banking specialist or whatever. So I'm in, I'm an. There's different variations of that phrase. I am vice president of investment banking would also fit there. And so would all the other titles. But what's important is the I'm invested in banking. The stuff in the middle doesn't matter. But if you were trying to think of all the different ways that you'd have to search for that to find all the different titles, now you're back to pages and pages of long Boolean syntax with lots of parentheses, quotations, ors, nots, ands, and forget it. Not going to work. Yeah. I'm not going to help you find a date on LinkedIn. Exactly how many? It's a common one, but if you're looking for somebody that's, say, for example, a database engineer, wouldn't work. So what's the equivalent there, right? Tuned databases, right? Wrote custom queries, those kinds of things. So you have to, it's not going to be the same for everybody. You have to think about that particular context. Now, wrote code is very specific to computer scientists who write, who actually program and write in programming language, but a lot of people these days don't do that anymore. Or software engineers are using, 5GL languages or drag and drop stuff, so they might not even be writing code anymore. So, it's whatever it is that they say that they do. Just think of the action words that they use, right? Hey, what do you do for a living? Well, I blah, blah. That's what I want you to find. Yep. That's the word. Not what's on their resume, not the keywords that are on the requirements, but what they say they do for a living. Google won't accept more than one site search. So site:/GitHub or site:/SourceForge won't work on Google, but it will work on Bing. To do this on Google, you have to use a custom search engine. But you can definitely use that on Bing. It will support multiple site searches in as many as, I think that there's a 255 character limit as far as I can tell. So as many ors as you can fit in 255 characters. Which isn't that many, but at least it's 3 or 4. But you just can't do it on Google, unfortunately. So if you try this one, you can click on the link when you get the PowerPoint, but this one is a site search on Pfizer, and it's looking for the word regulatory and he or she was. The kind of results that you're going to get if we had, are we online, Dilip? Can you click on that link? Do we have an internet connection? Can you click on that first link? The kind of results that you would get, open a browser and see if we actually are online. We might not be. Will be people being described in, for example, white papers and research documents, where at the bottom of the footer of the document, there's a little about the author. Mary Smith, blah, 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 blah. When she was at Pfizer or Merck, she was chief of regulatory affairs, that kind of stuff. Yeah, sorry about that. No internet. And then the other one, go back to the PowerPoint if you can. Forget it. Let's just keep going. Thanks, Dilip. Site:/raps.org, that's an association, regulatory affair professionals, and there I'm using is something director. So is the director, is a director, is senior director, is regional director. You get it? That's the pattern. So it doesn't even have to be about writing code, right? iOS developer is blank iOS blank developer. People talking about themselves, you can use the phrase about me, contact me, my bio, my resume, in quotations. Or you can look for words in the URL that identify pages that are directories, such as staff or alumni. So if the word people or staff is in the address of that page, chances are pretty good that it's a page listing a bunch of people or staff, right? So what else? About us, alumni, roster, members, directory. There's a bunch of them. In fact, I have an example here. Where is it? I had one. Yeah, there we go. Copy and paste that. And take the bottom part out. Pharmacological clinical trial medical director, and replace it with whatever you want. This is like all of the above. A little bit more complex than I would like, but it captures a lot of those people being talked about pages. Conferences I attended, I went to Java 1. I was at Oracle Con, in quotations. Find that on Facebook, find that on Twitter, find that on LinkedIn. It's a status update. So it'll point to people that, obviously if they were at Java 1, they're a Java developer. Or they're a salesperson, but you could easily eliminate that. Make sense? Yeah? How are we doing with time? Time check. Time check. We have how many minutes? Left? Okay, great. All right. Sorry, back up. I meant to. So we've got conferences I attended, I was at. Yes, the one at the top. I didn't talk about that one. So, word minutes, does that mean anything to you? Meeting minutes. So when the word meeting and the word minutes appear on the same document, it's probably a meeting minutes document. What is one of the first things, according to Robert's Rules of Order, that we're supposed to do when we have a meeting? Huh? Attendance. That's right. So very commonly in meeting minutes, right at the very top of the section, is a list of people present. And I find so many leads that way. Actually sickening how many leads I found that way. All I have is a name, but I know exactly what they do because they're in a meeting that is specifically about frothing in the oil industry for refining petroleum from oil sands. That's what the meeting is about. Chances are pretty good that the people that are in that meeting are in that business. Otherwise, that would be one really boring meeting, right? So in attendance, list of 12 people, name and company. All I need is their name. And if I have their company, even better. I can now find their phone number, their email address, the name of their pet, how much they pay for their house, their social security number, and their credit card information. I'm kidding. Oh my God, again, really? Meeting minutes is a good one. You can use a couple of different websites for hashtags, hashtags.org, Twubs, TweetChat, and Tweeps. I know it sounds like I have a speech impediment. I thought, putty that. But that's just the way the Twitter world is. Everything is something. But these 4 places will allow you to search for concepts such as Java or DBMS or ERP and give you the hashtags that have been commonly used in recent history. You can then use that hashtag and go to search on Twitter, search.twitter.com, and search for that hashtag. Say, for example, RSS14. And then you'll find somebody that's tweeting with a hashtag. You can then take that user handle, at Shally, for example, and go to snapbird.org and look through their entire history of tweets. Not available on Twitter. Why do you look through that? Because you want to see things like where they checked in. So they used RSS14 as a hashtag, which means they're a recruiter or a sourcer. You went to Snapbird and looked through their history to see where they checked in. Chances are they probably checked in at work at some point. Now you know where they work. Get it? Deep web. The first one at the top there is one of my all-time favorite hacks. This only works on Google, and it takes advantage of the pipe operator, which is the OR syntax. Essentially what that translates to is effectively I'm searching for I worked for, or I worked at, or I worked on, or I worked with, or I work for, or I work at, or I worked on, or I work with, all in one search. Pretty sweet, huh? And then, of course, the name of a company. So you put in chartered accountant, I worked / worked for, at, on, with, KPMG, bingo. Used to work is also a good one. My team, our team. The second version, used to work asterisk company, only works on Google because you can only do the asterisk search on Google. Doesn't work on Bing, but the first one works on Bing. Or any other search engine, Exceled, Gigablast, whatever. Bleco, whatever you want to use. Here's some examples. I mentioned earlier the Korean, my Korean, I know Korean, fluent in Korean, and then you add some skills-related words to filter out anything that isn't, obviously you don't want to just find all Koreans. You want to find Koreans that are in neonatal medicine, for example. Another one is titles that are a little bit more generic, like assistant manager. Assistant manager could be any one of a million different things. But if you use assistant manager in this context and then add some additional skill, you'll find people, based on their bios and profiles, using a more generic job title. It'd be a lot harder to do that. This is especially useful for sales, because a lot of salespeople are regional manager, assistant manager, district manager, those kinds of things. And the keyword sales is a really bad keyword for search. You get a lot of just not really useful results. Also, this works for number of reports. So on Google, if you're looking for people that have managed others, right? Sometimes you have a requirement that says, I need someone that has 10 years of experience and has managed at least 5 people, or has managed a team that's at least 5 or bigger. You ever got that? Someone who's managed a team of at least 5, right? On Google, what do? Open quotations, managed, and then the number 5, ... 10, and that'll be a range of 5 to 10, and then space, engineers, close quotations. The results will be managed 5 engineers, managed 6 engineers, managed 7 engineers, managed 8 engineers, managed 9 engineers, managed 10 engineers. Doesn't work with software developers because nobody manages software developers. So what do you do there? Led, supervised, whatever. They're their own little breed. So it would be like supervised the team or led a team of 10 ... 20 software engineers, for example. You get the picture, right? That phrase search allows you to find teams. People who have managed teams because of the context in that search. Skip that one. Peer groups based on photo captions. I like this one. This is a big wow one. It's one of those things that you show somebody else and they're completely blown away and impressed with how smart you are. Except it's really easy, so you're, just kind of showing off at this point. But it's a lot of fun to show people. Basically, what we're looking for here is the caption underneath a photo. Very often, underneath a photo, you have, from left to right, Mr. Shally and Mr. Tim, Mr. Russ, and blah, 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 blah. Right there, underneath the photo, right? Only it doesn't have to be a photo, does it? Because PDF documents are not photos. But what do we see under PDF document? Pictures. From left to right, Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones, Mr. Right? So the search here is L to R with a period, L to R without the period, left to right, right to left, etc. You can also do front row, back row, clockwise, counterclockwise. You can get a little fancier with that if you want. Anybody watch Scooby-Doo? Front row, back row, row. Yeah, that was bad. But hey, I'm trying, right? Try using the name of a conference, the name of a company, the name of a group, the name of a product. So, for example, Recruitment Summit India, from left to right, Shally, Steckerl, and Dilip Thomas. And it's a PDF, not a JPEG. I'm not telling you to search for images. I'm telling you to search for captions. The images will come naturally. They might be JPEGs. They might be shockwave files. You don't know. But because they have captions, it identifies them as groups of people. Groups of people posing for a picture at a conference, or at a grand opening, or at whatever. You name the event. Lots of pictures out there with that. By the way, this is really, really easy to use on Flickr. Try it on Flickr and you'll see. Put in like a job title and this, and you'll see lots of like event pictures with 12 software engineers, and they have their name tags right there. Name, company, you can zoom in because it's a high resolution picture. So you can zoom in, you get the name, the Twitter handle, all right there. It doesn't get easier than that. I love that stuff. All right, what else? The 3+ method. This is also peer group. It's kind of part of rather than deep web and natural language, this is part of what we refer to at the Sourcing Institute as peer regression. In other words, you know somebody who's really good at a particular thing, find other people like that person. Wherever they came from, others came from as well, right? For example, where did Bill Gates come from? Wherever Bill Gates came from, there's probably a handful of other people who are also like Bill Gates. You see what I mean? Bad example, because you wouldn't want to be recruiting somebody from back then, but you find someone who's a prominent speaker on MongoDB and Hadoop, and they speak at a couple of conferences. Use their name and the name of 2 or 3 other speakers that speak about MongoDB and Hadoop, and what you'll get are pages of speakers, listing speakers that speak about MongoDB and Hadoop, more than just the 3. You'll get conferences that list all the speakers on that topic. So because there's 3 like it, what you're saying is, find me 3 like this, the page will contain more like it. So you use the names of 3 prominent people in that particular sector, and then you'll find other people, whether it's a caption, or whether it's a speaker, or a roster, or a membership, or directory, etc. Sorry about that. References to a person by name. If you go to blogsearch.google.com and you type in open quotations and Shally Steckerl close quotations, what do you think comes back? If I am seeing the text, visualize in your mind, and Shally Steckerl, what do you think came before that? Sourcing and Shally Steckerl? Somebody else's name. Tim O'Connor and Shally Steckerl, right? So the and before my name is almost always preceded by somebody else's name. So you use and Shally Steckerl, and you'll find Tim O'Connor and Shally Steckerl. Or you use and Tim O'Connor, and you'll find Shally Steckerl and Tim O'Connor. Make sense? The names of the prominent people. The idea behind this is, if I was at that company at that time with that person, and they've since become famous and moved on, I might still be at that company still doing that same job, quite possibly. But I'm not on LinkedIn. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. You're finding me because of my contact or association with said prominent person. But I myself don't have a big spotlight on me. Think about that. How many of you know someone who's not famous, but maybe listed on a website somewhere? Much more common than you think. Phrase searches for peer groups also work really well. For LinkedIn, all you really need to do is type into Google people you know, and you're going to get LinkedIn profiles. You don't even need www.linkedin.com, because pretty much almost all the results will come back, especially if you use keywords like geography. Type in, quote, greater Atlanta area, end quote, and search for people you know in that phrase search like that, and what you'll get back are probably exclusively LinkedIn profiles. No ads, no company pages, profiles. You don't need to use the in-URL pub or in-URL in hack. That's become obsolete. How about things such as reported to or reports to? What do you think precedes that? Who's going to report to? Someone who reports to someone else. Right? When Shally was at Microsoft, he reported to the VP of blah, blah, blah. That context. Love doing this on job postings. People spill all kinds of beans on job postings. Go to Indeed or Simply Hired and put in reports to or reported to and the name of a company, and you're going to get all the information you need to build an org chart for that company. It's crazy. Because a lot of times it says, this job reports to, we need a junior developer, this job reports to a senior developer. We need a senior developer, this job reports to developer engineering manager, whatever. You see what I mean? You put them two together, and before you know it, you got an org chart of what the job titles are for that company. People reveal all kinds of stuff because they don't really think about what happens when you aggregate all the data. Okay? Now, two things I'm going to mention about this as I end my presentation with you. One is, you might think that putting together a cookie out of crumbs may not be very tasty, but it's just as nutritious. And if you have the ability to make a cookie out of crumbs, you'll never go hungry. Think about that. Do you understand what I'm saying? The second one, I'm going to wait another couple of minutes before I give you my last one. One more thing I want to share with you, cloud documents. More and more people these days are putting their PowerPoints and Word documents and PDF documents up on SlideShare and DocStock and DocShare, a bunch of those different ones. You could use site colon or site colon on Bing, or you could just create a custom search engine. By the way, that is a functioning custom search engine. If you go to shally.me/capital R, capital T, cloud, capital C, capital S, capital E, you'll see an example of a working cloud doc search engine that only searches cloud doc hosting websites, about 120 of them. It doesn't search any other website, just websites that store presentations. So, what am I going to find if I do a search on SlideShare and I use the word engineering manager, or the phrase engineering manager, and the name Google? If I search on SlideShare for engineering manager quote and Google, what do you think am I going to get? What am I going to get? SlideShare has what? Presentations. What kind of presentations are going to come up that have the words engineering manager and Google? Written by an engineering manager at Google, where the first slide is about me. I am an engineering manager at Google. Here's my phone number and email address. Or the last slide. Yes, exactly. Try it. Oh, you might get more, yes. You might get more than you bargained for, but the point is, a lot of these PowerPoints are out there, and this brings me to my last breadcrumb. The first one was, if you put together breadcrumbs and you can make a cookie out of it, or you can put together crumbs and make a cookie, you're never going to go hungry. The second one is about security by obscurity. If I was to take a $100 bill, or what's the biggest denomination bill you guys have, 1,000? There's nothing bigger than that people use. So if I take a 1,000 rupee bill and I tape it to the bottom of this chair right here, that will remain secure as long as nobody turns the chair upside down. Pirates and their buried treasure, right? So what happens is people put PowerPoint presentations on different websites or PDF documents, and they contain information such as their phone number and their email address and their job title, and they never think that somebody might be searching against it. So here is a presentation, I kid you not, try this when you get back to your desk. Internal use only, in quotations. Quote, internal use only, right? And then the name of some company, a competitor of yours. And you'll see PowerPoints that come up that are stamped confidential, secret, internal use only, and they're on SlideShare. What? Security by obscurity. That $100 or $1,000 bill is safe until somebody does that. People just don't think it through. Right. Yep. So they're a Word doc to PDF. Yep. That's a cloud doc type of site. Yep. And resumes too. People will save or convert their Word version to PDF, and that, yep, exactly. So those are cloud docs as well. Those are PDFs, but there's Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoints, Word documents, besides PDFs. What do you think is going to be in an Excel spreadsheet? You ever seen a list of people, first name, last name, email address, and phone number in an Excel spreadsheet? So try searching file type : XLS, and then the email address at kpmg.com and the word chartered accountant. And you'll get spreadsheets listing names, phone numbers, and email addresses of chartered accountants at KPMG. That's free. For the next one, I'll charge you. So, I hope that at the very least I've gotten you thinking about different ways to query the same data that you already have access to. Really, all of this is about finding information in a different way than what you're used to. It's speaking a different language. What is it that your candidates are talking about? What action words do they use? What phrases do they use? What websites do they go to? Where do they store their files, their documents, things like that? Just think differently. Antlers, bushy tail. You don't need a resume. Sometimes a bio that says, Shally was blah, 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 at blah, 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 is all you need in order to know that this is somebody you want to email or call or text or whatever. It's enough. You may be wrong. They may not be a good candidate, but you guess probably just as good as if you had a resume. You might still be wrong that way. How often does that happen? Right? So any questions? Brain full. Must have coffee. Mm-hmm. You could, for example, archives of journals, one of the examples we talked about would be like a professional association that publishes journals. If you go directly to their website, you can search the journals, but you can't find those on Google. The what? Right. Oh, you're using another Ayers term, aren't you? Peel back, is that what you're saying? Peel back? Okay, right, all right. No, what I'm saying is if you find one like it, there's probably others wherever that came from, right? So you might accidentally stumble on a copy of that journal that is not on that website, but you know that that journal exists. So you use the name of that journal as a search, and you come across the website where the other ones are hosted. Now you can access the rest of them. But Google only found one, because maybe that happened to be published somewhere else. There's a copy of it on SlideShare or DocStock, right? Somehow it leaked out of the website. But you know that that journal has other cousins like it, right? So you Google the name of the journal, find the website where it originally came from, and then you can search that website because they will have a built-in search. And you can search the documents, and it's free, and you don't have to have a password to get into it. But Google never touched on the dropdown. So that's an example of that. Another one is scanned documents. So Google has a magazine section where they scan magazines and put them online. So you can actually, if you go to books.google.com, and then you'll see there's two links. One on the left says find books and magazines, and the one on the right is the Google Play. Don't go to the one on the right, which is the store. Go to the one on the left, and then you'll see a search box. In that search box, there's a drop-down that says books or magazines. Select magazines, and it'll search the text of scanned-in magazines. Doesn't come up on regular Google results. It's like their own little library of scanned, like Scientific American, all the journals, tech journals. Remember the old Dr. Dobbs and all that stuff? All that stuff is in there. Magazines, journals. So you can search that. That's deep web. Technically, that's Google, but it's actually a different part of Google. Maps is another one. Directories. Sometimes you'll find people inside of a map database. Contact information and names of people. That's not necessarily coming from a search engine. In other words, that particular map has indexed a bunch of, let's say, I don't know, here's a good example. We were just recently worked on a project where they wanted us to find all the restaurant managers for a bunch of different chains. Like if I give you the names, I don't know if you'd recognize them, like Chili's, Applebee's, Red Lobster, California Pizza Kitchen, stuff like that. They wanted us to find the names of all of the managers for all of these locations in a particular state. So that's an example. We used a geolocation service. That is, the purpose of it is to help you find California Pizza Kitchens. But it just so happens to also index the other data. So that's another example of that. Wouldn't get to it from Google. You'd have to use that map specific. Go to California Pizza Kitchen and find locations, right? And then you get that data. Yep. It's an easier way to explain that. Thank you. Any other questions? No? We good? All right. Thank you.